What's going on, everybody? This is George Khalife, and it's episode 31 of Let's Grab Coffee. I'm here with Drew Green, CEO and president of INDOCHINO, the world's largest custom apparel company. Drew's an award-winning entrepreneur, having founded shop.ca, previous to INDOCHINO, a multi-merchant marketplace which is now owned by Emerge Commerce, and he's led entrepreneurial roles at several other startups that were eventually acquired as well. And I'm just really grateful to have you on the podcast, Drew.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your time, and thank you for having us on.
Love it. So I'm glad we can finally make this work. And I guess my first question to you, given everything you've done so far, a lot of success, I'm sure a lot of challenges, on the road, a lot of ups and downs. What got you into entrepreneurship, and how did you find your way into commerce?
Yeah, so, I've just been really, really fortunate in my career. I think, worked with a lot of great people that have, really produced a lot of success. But like you said, there's certainly ups and downs to the path of an entrepreneur or the journey that an entrepreneur goes on. I think for me, just at a young age, I really wanted to, as much as I could possibly, control my own destiny. And so, whether it was in my teenage years or even in university, really always found my way to opportunities to really start my own business, whether that, was a health business I started in university or an entertainment business I started in university. Frankly, part of that was also to pay the bills, but I enjoyed that journey versus, working for somebody else. And that's really translated throughout my career. I think that any opportunity that I've gotten involved with, whether it's been starting a company, working with other entrepreneurs to grow a company, or, board and advisor and investor roles, I've really enjoyed, what the journey is to creating and building a company.
That's very interesting. I guess, just out of curiosity, do you think, having gone through entrepreneurship now in various segments, do you think that entrepreneurship is something that you're just born as, or is it something that you can, gradually work on and improve over time?
Well, I think that's a great question. I've been asked that before, and I think my answer continues to evolve. I think the key characteristics of an entrepreneur is somebody that's, able to quickly, decisively, and with passion solve problems.
Right.
And, another key attribute is their ability to, handle risk and put risk, in perspective as they go through their life. And then the third thing would just be to have vision, right? To not just see the next day or week or month or even year, in terms of your life and what's going on in the world, but to have a longer term view of things. And, I think some of those are innate. You're certainly born with, some of those abilities or some of those characteristics of the person, but it's almost like anything in life. Like the more you invest in developing a skill that you have, or a dream that you set, or a goal that you set, the better you will become at it. And I don't think, there's always the 0.001% of folks that, start a company in their early 20s and are massive successes, but that truly is the extreme edge case. Most entrepreneurs, it takes them years, decades, several decades to, hone their ability and also to be successful. And I think that's the journey you've got to sign up for, right? Because entrepreneurialism isn't about hitting the lottery. It's really about, a lifestyle and, a commitment to a bigger and a longer term vision that you might have as a person.
100%. And I guess, in your journey, when you were thinking more long term and you were thinking about what to start, how to start, for someone listening to this who might be in university, might be in school, how did you go about really thinking of these types of ideas and getting yourself immersed into different ventures or initiatives later on?
Well, I think that's another good question, man. I'm a big believer in, a couple things. Number one, you need to set goals. So, whatever your goals are, they're yours. But too many people go through life without, setting the right goals or big goals, without planning what they want to it all starts with, grounding yourself in, the objectives and goals you have for your life. And then I think number two is the sooner you can learn what you're good at, I think the better off you will be. And so whether you choose a career as a lawyer or an accountant or a plumber, whatever it might be, or an entrepreneur, the better. But learning what you're good at, is super, super important. And then the third thing would just be being involved in things that you are inspired by. And that includes the people that you work with, the industry that you're in, the change that you want to see occur within the industry.
Right.
It's really important to have passion around that. Like, for example, my first venture was in the health and wellness field, and that's an area that I've always was really, really passionate about as an athlete. My degree's in kinesiology, and frankly, I needed to earn money to pay for school, so that was part of the equation too.
It was the right step.
But I saw a path to earn great money, to build a business, to impact people's lives positively, and frankly, to work my butt off to achieve the goals that I had at the time. And so I did it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, Drew, especially, your points around finding your strengths. You said this previously as well, but like aligning yourself with people who then fill those gaps or weaknesses that you have, but also sticking to things that you enjoy and just kind of trying them out, right? And I mean, it's through experience that you're going to find and actually execute things that you ideate. Otherwise, they're just ideas on a paper, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's totally right. And that first one about people is super important, right? Because just because somebody's a friend or somebody's super intelligent, or somebody, super supportive doesn't mean they're the right partner for you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a good question, Drew, as well, that we can draw upon is, and I get asked this by a lot of founders, when they're starting out their ventures, they're typically looking for partners, right? So say, for example, I'm in business. I now need to find someone who's more technical, maybe a software developer. How do I go about finding that? Do I leverage LinkedIn? Like, what kind of advice would you give on that front?
Well, that's a good one. I think it depends on the stage you're at. I think in the early days of any company, you've got to be extremely, nimble and really seek out and frankly sell, the vision that you have to anybody that you get involved. I just like to do things in long-term views, right? I don't like to hire people or partner with people without making, a long-term commitment to them or having them do the same for me. And that doesn't always work out, but at least I think you should go into it like that. I think if you're just starting out your business, I think obviously and you're sort of early on in your journey or your professional journey. Look, I think your network is the most important thing, right? Being introduced to people that can have a positive impact on the vision or plan that you have for yourself, for your business.
Yeah, that's very true. And when you talk about networking, I mean, there's so many channels now. And, you and I got I guess connected through LinkedIn, shot you a message, and here we are. And I think that's how easy it is today versus 10, 20 years ago, and that's a huge leverage.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And frankly, I'm not a huge networker, right? Like I don't go out of my way to go to conferences or things like that. It's, I've built a very, very large but very valuable, group of relationships around the world. But it really has come in my own style.
What would you say your style is?
What's that?
Like, what would you say your style is? I'd be interested to know in terms of networking. Like, how was that for you?
Well, I just think it's really been based on quality versus quantity.
Got it.
I've got, a lot of really, really close, associates or people in my close circle that I've worked with, for 20 years. And, I rely on them. They rely on me. The relationship's built on trust. And, that's taken decades to cultivate. But I'd rather have, 5 or 10 amazing people in my network than 500,000 that don't add value or that I can't add value to.
Now that you do have a global network, you're saying you focus on quality over quantity. How do you go about maintaining those relationships? Now that they're kind of growing, really.
Well, it's just really about investing the time, right? I mean, I've got 15 entrepreneurs that I've chosen to work with here for what I think will be the next decade or so. It's taken me many years to find them and for them to find me.
Right.
And I'm pretty maniacal in my want to focus. I don't like to waste time.
Mm-hmm.
Time is a really valuable asset that we all only have so much of, and so I just really make sure that I make time for what's most important, including my family. Right? I think,
of course,
the one thing I learned early on as an entrepreneur is that you can become obsessed really easily.
Yeah.
And that can be detrimental. And so you've got to have balance. And I don't mean balance by like doing yoga or meditating and which there's nothing wrong with. It's awesome. But I mean balance in terms of really understanding what's important in your life and making time for that. And whether that's your network or your family or the businesses that you're involved in or you've invested in, or your own business that you're growing, at a rapid rate, you've got to really balance out where you spend your time.
Yeah, I mean, and on that topic, one of the things I really enjoyed about what you said once was, you really have to enjoy the journey, right? As an entrepreneur, like it doesn't make much sense if you're just focused on the outcome. Like you could really have to enjoy the process as well. And I follow you on Instagram. I made this note before we started the podcast, but a lot of your videos and pictures are about your son playing ball, and you're always there. You show up despite running this huge, online platform with INDOCHINO. Like, how do you go about balancing that, especially now at this stage of your career?
Well, I had to learn, right? I had to learn how important it was to do that, and I want to be able to look back and say that I was at those games, and I prioritize my days so that I can do both. If it means I have to wake up extra early or I have to work late, so that I have the times to see my boys like this weekend play 8 games, then that's what I'll do. And you certainly, like, I think for any entrepreneur or for any CEO or executive, you could always work. You could literally work not 100 hours a week, 120, but you got to find the time, and you don't want to have regrets, man, because to your point of what I said, it's really not about the outcome. It's not a zero-sum game, right? It's about the most rewarding thing will be, the time you spend going through the journey and the experiences you have, the people that you meet, the places that you go. Those are the treasures, man. Everybody, if they put their mind to it, can be successful monetarily, but can you be successful, in your own eyes as it relates to what's most important to you? That's the challenge.
Yeah, no, and you know what kind of brings to mind as you're saying that is the unfortunate case and a very sad case with Anthony Bourdain, but someone who's amassed so much success, lot of wealth, but you see it time and time again when people do that, you can still be empty from the perspective of your personal life as well, and I think that's what people don't necessarily always focus on. So I'm glad that you're shedding light on that.
Well, yeah, and here's the other thing is that, you're going to make mistakes, right? You're not going to do everything as you want to, and, you could miss some opportunities on the personal side or the professional side, but, it's important not to be too hard on yourself and, to carry perspective. That's one of the things I try to do as a CEO is bring perspective to whatever it is we're doing, or whatever it is we're achieving, so that people stay grounded in what's important.
Right. And one of those perspectives, Drew, I guess in entrepreneurship, and something you allude to often is risk, right? And I think one of the things you said, which really resonated with me, is you said, risk isn't starting a company and following your dreams. That's a privilege. Risk is really an illusion. So how do you adjust your perspective in dealing with risk when you're pursuing entrepreneurship?
Well, I think there's a couple points to that. I think, number one, really being able to set yourself up to be able to deal with risk and to manage it. Right. Because, it can become overwhelming. There can be, huge potholes as you go through, your life as an entrepreneur or your life in general. And, the support system you put in place, the people that you think
Right.
what the quote you're referring to, one of the things I talked about is, look, you can get a job at an amazing company and do an amazing job and still lose that job.
Right.
There is risk in anything. And kind of really understanding that and really understanding how to mitigate risk as you go through your life is super, super, super important. And, if you do it well, then risk is just an illusion.
I love that. If you can, if we can sort of go back to when you first opened your eyes on Indochino, you're making that step forward, that transition, you're carrying that quote unquote risk. What was going through your mind? Like, walk me through your mindset at the time. What did you want to get out of it? And what did you see, going into that pursuit?
Yeah, in particular with Indochino.
Yeah. I'd really like to touch on that because it's so interesting how much it's grown since you've joined, and I just want to really see like what was in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, look, the honest truth is that Indochino was an amazing concept that had a ton of potential, but was in a very, very bad place. It had lost a tremendous amount of capital. It wasn't growing, but yet there were some key attributes to the business that I felt were extraordinary, and if executed upon, we could build a market leader in a very short amount of time, and we've proven to be able to do that. But to take you back to that time, it was one of the biggest risks. It was one of the most risky sort of decisions I've ever made. The company was undercapitalized. The company was losing a ton of capital, a ton of money. And, I really needed to come in and be decisive. And, we had 3 or 4 things that we needed to accomplish in that first year. And, we became maniacal about accomplishing those things. Everything from capitalizing the company to re-engineering the supply chain, to resetting, the cost structure of the business, to increasing media 3 or 4-fold. All those things were very, very decisive moves that we made in order to create what is now the largest, custom apparel company in the world.
And what are you most proud of? Like, if you look back at, at that kind of growth spurt, what are you really most proud of? Was it, just turning this story around? Was it the growth phase? Was it raising 100 million plus to really get it to where it is? What would you say that actually is for you?
I think so far what I'm most proud of is the team. And what we've been able to do with the team. We've got almost 700 employees now.
Wow.
We'll have 1,000 by the end of the year, and a lot of the folks that we had in what I'll call fairly junior individual contributor roles. I instilled a lot of trust in, and I took it upon myself to partner with and make successful. And a lot of people have stepped up. I think we've had over 200 promotions in the last 4 years.
That's amazing.
We've had folks that have gone from, sort of the lowest levels in the company to be managing people now. Our executive team is constantly evolving and maturing. And we've got something really good as it relates to people and culture. And that's probably what I'm most proud of so far. I mean, the company has this year will be 6 times bigger than it was when we took it over. From a revenue standpoint, we'll have its 3rd year of even positive results. That's all great. But when I look back at this journey so far, it's really about, how we've cultivated people, how we've given people opportunity, how they've stepped up, and the culture we built around that.
And what are you looking for primarily in your leaders, like the ones actually, running the business? And to your point, team is everything. So what is it that you look for in others that you see could be one day, visionary leaders such as yourself?
Well, I look for people that work hard. I think that nothing great can be achieved without that basic. I think you can be smart. You can be, extraordinary in your intelligence and your skills. But unless you're willing to work hard, you won't achieve extraordinary results. I just don't believe it. Don't see it. And don't think that it exists without hard work. So I look for hard work. and contribute to the dream that we might have together. And, I think that the third thing would just be, there has to be something about somebody that I admire. I don't know how to describe it more basic than that, but, I think everybody on my management team and a lot of people in the company, if not everyone, there's something that I admire about them.
Yeah.
And it could be something, as small as, what they do with their spare time to a skill set that they have that I don't have,
So it's almost that feel, like that intuition,
Yeah.
Intrinsic, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Something you can't necessarily quantify. Interesting.
That's right.
Well, I appreciate those insights. Looking back as well, you talk a lot about patience, right? The importance of patience, embracing it. And I think when you kind of look back at your sort of journey, how important it was for you. If you look at a lot of entrepreneurs today, especially ones who are aspiring to be successful entrepreneurs, especially millennials, my own generation, sometimes patience is not something we're extremely strong at. But something I think that's super important, especially, given just the landscape, like how easy it is to raise money now, how easy it is to connect with people. We just want things now. We want things quickly, at the tips of our fingers. So what kind of advice would you give? And maybe what lessons did you learn, in your sort of training for patience?
Well, I think you kind of nailed it with, the current generation and what I see, as somebody that has, employs hundreds or has employed thousands of them.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to have perspective, going back to that word, and, realizing that, the biggest goal and dreams you can set are those that last a lifetime. And, I think too often folks get caught up in the, how am I progressing in 6 months or a year? What's my title change? I would focus on building, your skill sets. I would focus on, learning. I would focus on, really, really setting out your dreams and your goals and then plans around them.
Mm-hmm.
That's so much more valuable than, perhaps how much money you make currently.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like if you have a job where you're learning a ton of amazing things, you're working with great people, you're getting, experiences that others, could only dream of, and then you might move to another job because they give you, an increased title or $10,000 more a year or $20,000 more a year. I've seen that mistake so often, and those types of decisions can set you back, right? Mm-hmm. And so it kind of goes back to setting out your objectives, setting out your goals, knowing what your dreams are, and then really devoting your life towards them. And then going through that journey and knowing that it's not going to happen in a week or a month or 10 years. It's a lifelong journey.
Love it. Before we wrap up, Drew, I do want to ask, I have 2 quick questions for you. The first is every powerful leader always has this weird morning routine. For some reason, it's either they wake up at 5 a.m., they're, running on the treadmill, they're doing something interesting that kind of piques my interest. I'm just curious to know, do you have, a morning routine that works for you?
I do. I have a night routine that's probably more prevalent. Like I'm maniacal about my calendar and how I plan my days and, doing what I call completing.
Okay.
I don't like to leave things open. I like to see things through. And, so every night before I go to bed, I clean out my inbox. I don't have in any given night, I'll never have more than 10 unanswered messages. And I get hundreds of emails a day. Everything is filed properly, and my calendar is my life guide, right? I've got a lot of responsibilities with my family. I've got responsibilities, with my company INDOCHINO and outside of INDOCHINO. And so every night I look at, the next week, the next month, the next day, and I make sure I'm properly planned. And I make sure my communication is tight, right? Like I don't leave emails unanswered like a lot of people do. For one reason, I just think it's disrespectful, but for another reason, if you know somebody and they've communicated with you, you can take time to follow up with them.
Right.
And so those are just a couple things. My mornings all depend on my calendar. So, this morning,
And the final question for you, sir. What is one book, you can have 2 or 3 if you'd like, but one book that changed your life?
Well, that's an easy one. I bought the book and handed it out, literally thousands of times. It's called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Yes, sir. I love it.
My father gave that book to me when I was 19 or 20 years old, and it really just changed my life. And because of that book, I've traveled all over the world. I've set big goals and achieved some of them. And I've learned to, enjoy this life, and not just, the fruits of your labor, but actually enjoy the whole experience. And, I've recommended the book literally tens of thousands of times, but I've also literally bought it and handed it out thousands of times.
I'm sure Paulo's really grateful for that. But yeah, no, definitely that's on the top of my list, as well as The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. If you know Robin Sharma, that's another great one. I think you'd enjoy as well if you haven't read it.
I have not. I'll check it out.
For sure. Well, really appreciate it, Drew. Loved our conversation. A lot of insights I know that my community is going to take value from. So thank you very much for your time, sir.
Yeah, thank you, and congrats on this podcast and what you're doing, and I appreciate your patience in putting this together. I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Cheers, Drew. Have a great one.